Okay, I'm going to go over here. Many of you guys are like me, and back in the 80s, maybe you painted a few things, and back then you could just lightly color sand it with a hand sanding, and then the buffer would kind of do the rest of it. Today's paints are not the same way. I think they're a little bit more rubberized than the old ones that we used to do, and the buffer would cut it quite a bit faster. So you have to do a different process in your color sanding. And some of you guys are just trying it by hand, and you're finding out that you're getting orange peel in your finish. And on something really smooth like a VW bus, they aren't very forgiving, because big flat panels, you can see pretty much anything. So let me show you the process that I use that works. It took me like 10 different ways before I figured it out. First thing you need is a DA sander. You don't want the 3/16 rotation. This, I think, is an 1/8 inch rotation. And throw away your PSA pad and get a nice hook loop pad. That's the only thing you can be using today. They sell these sanders at Harbor Freight Tools, but it's called a composite sander, and they work well, but the trigger mechanism always breaks, so I made my own. I had a cheap one. I want to get a good one, but little by little I want to get the right tools. The first part of the process is I use a 1500 grit hook loop wet paper. And a lot of you guys that have done this before are going to go, oh, I used a hook loop paper and I used a 1500 grit and I got all these swirls in my paint. Well, before you make up your decision and cut the video off, watch the rest of this, because I'm going to show you how you get those swirls out very easily. Okay, so you go ahead and sand it with one of these. Without, this is the foam pad that you'll be using next, without this, because unless you want to sand it by hand, you know, and you'll still get orange peel when you do that. But if you sand it just with the DA, with this paper, you can actually sand out your orange peel very easily and very quickly, and it's nothing like hand sanding. I'm too old to hand sand. So as long as your paint job has enough material on the substrate, then you can actually just sand the daylights out of it. I sand it to, you know, I've got a very, very light orange peel. I mean, it's almost smooth, but after you buff it, even if you hand sand it with 1500 or 2000 or 3000 or whatever by hand, you know, start with, you know, 1000, go to 2000, whatever, you end up with orange peel. Even with a block and everything, it just takes forever, and you're still can see some orange peel in it, just a very, very light amount on something this smooth and flat. So if you use the DA and you use this paper first, then you can actually sand it to the point where there's almost nothing left. But if your body work isn't done right, if you have nibs, high spots, little tiny ones, those are called nibs, in your body work, you may sand through. So be very careful, because you're flat sanding it. You're basically getting everything down to a really smooth surface and getting all the orange peel out of it. Okay, so sand it till where there's almost nothing. There's a few little areas here, you can see the edges. Okay, but I'm going to sand that all out and get it so it's really, really, really smooth to where you can't see the little divots. Almost can't see them. Leave a few of them maybe, because if you sand them all out, you might not have any finish left. So the next process is to use something called Abralon by Merca. They also have one that 3M makes. So this is your Abralon, Merca Abralon 1000. Now you say, well, why did we start with 1500 and now we're going back to 1000? Well, the 1000 is going to get rid of all of those, those swirl marks, because when you just go with just the wet paper like this, you're going to have a ton of swirl marks from the DA. Even though it's 1500, what happens is, as you go, you need to take a rag. I use a microfiber, and then wipe off your paper, because you'll get little chunks of material on your paper, and if you just wipe it off with a cloth, it comes right off. And those things will cause those little swirl marks that you're seeing in the finish. So you take this Abralon 1000 and you buzz over it real quick using one of these. This is a 3M, but Abralon has their own if you want to use theirs, Merca. And you use that first on your first set of the process. What I do is usually I'll go across the area, and then I'll go up half of what I've done, go back across, go up half again, back across, just like you did when you painted the vehicle. Go across, and then up half, and then up half, about this speed, and just go nice and slow one time with that. Then you switch to, well, this is 3000, you switch to 2000, and this is a cloth paper. It's not like regular sandpaper, and it won't leave swirl marks. Then you go to 3000, then finish with 4000. If you really want a nice finish, you go to 4000. If you're, I mean, it really comes out really smooth, and you will not have those swirl marks that you get from just using wet paper. Good luck with it, and just a few tips to make it easier for you. I had to learn this on my own. Thanks. Have a good day. Well, after you've done your color sanding, then you can proceed to your foam pad buffing, which I've always used this for many years. 3M Super Duty rubbing compound. It's a fast cut solution. If you're using something else and it takes a long time to buff it, then switch to this. It cuts really fast. You can use a foam pad for your first one. This one's kind of worn out. And then you want to switch pads after you've really done it well. I actually use, I'm looking for it, I still use one of these for my first cut. Some people don't like these because you're going to get a little more swirl. So it depends on the finish you're looking for. I don't really care about the swirl as much as I do orange peel. So I just go ahead and hit it with that first. Then I do it with one of these. Then you finish out with this finesse it. I mean, it's expensive, but there really isn't anything else. I tried this stuff, and it doesn't work the same. It works okay. I use it as a medium, because it was cheap. So I use that first, and just so I don't have to use so much of this, because this stuff's like 50 bucks. So, but then do that, and then use a hand glaze. You can use Imperial hand glaze by 3M. I just don't like to give 3M all my money, so I look for other things. That's why I use Merca. Or you can go to What is it called? Mariglaze number 7. McGuire's number 7. It's about the same thing as Imperial hand glaze from 3M. It might be a little bit cheaper when you buy it in hand glaze. So Then use that as a final finish to get rid of your final hand swirl marks. Have fun.